Daniel's consciousness flickered in and out like a candle struggling against a gust of wind. His body was heavy, as though the very ground had risen up to drag him down into the earth. The whispers had intensified, thick and suffocating. It wasn't just the voices of the past now, they were mixing with his own thoughts, twisting and distorting them until they weren't his anymore. "You are ours now, Sheriff," they murmured. The voice was 1,000 voices, layered on top of one another, rising and falling like the tides of a sea that never broke. He tried to scream, but nothing came out. His throat was raw, his body frozen in place. The figure, the tall, formless creature, stood over him, looming in the distance like a storm waiting to break. Its hand stretched out toward him, fingers long and cold, and as it moved, the air grew even colder. A heavy silence settled over the clearing, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that pressed down on the soul, making the world seem smaller, darker. The weight of everything around him, everything that had happened, everything that was happening, seemed to crush him from all sides. But then, something stirred within him. A spark, a flicker of defiance. "No," he managed to whisper, barely able to breathe, his voice lost in the chaos of the whispers. "I won't." The figure tilted its head, as if considering him. A low, guttural sound rumbled from within its chest, like a chuckle that had never known joy. "You think you can fight us?" The voice was soft, yet it carried a weight that made his entire body tremble. "You are just like all the others. You are part of this place now, Sheriff. You can't escape what you've become." Daniel's mind raced. He had been warned all his life, told by every elder, every child's story, every quiet conversation overheard in the tavern, that once you crossed into Black Hollow, there was no return. Once you entered, you were lost to the forest. Not just your body, but your very essence, your soul. This was the fate of Ravenshade. The ones who vanished were not just taken, they were claimed. Each person who disappeared was absorbed into the forest's endless hunger, twisted and changed until they were no longer recognizable, not human, not animal, just part of it. Daniel felt his body begin to tremble uncontrollably. His fingers twitched, and he wanted to move, to break free. But the forest had him. He was already inside it. The very land had wrapped its roots around him. His feet felt like they were sinking into the soil, as though the earth itself was pulling him down into its depths. And then he heard it, a whisper, a familiar voice. "Daniel." It was soft, barely audible over the distant rumble of the wind. But it was real, realer than anything else. He turned his head. There, standing just beyond the clearing, was a figure. A person, but not one Daniel had seen in years. It was Carl Hendricks. Daniel was no longer in Ravenshade. He couldn't explain it, couldn't even begin to understand how he had crossed the line into the heart of Black Hollow. But he had. The ground beneath his feet was soft, slick with something darker than rain, and the air tasted strange, bitter, metallic like the first bite of a nightmare. His eyes blurred as he struggled to focus. The trees were different now, their twisted limbs stretching unnaturally high, curling like fingers that wanted to pull him deeper into their embrace. He couldn't remember how long he had been walking, or if he had been walking at all. The voices were still there, not whispers, but a hum, a low, continuous murmur that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. The sound didn't come from any particular place. It was everywhere. The stones beneath his feet, the sky above him, the trees that surrounded him. It all thrummed with the same endless drone. "Come close." The words came again, but this time they weren't spoken. They were felt, as if the forest itself was pressing in on him, shaping the words with its very breath. He wasn't sure if he had heard them with his ears, or if they had been planted in his mind, but they felt as real as the pounding in his chest. He stopped. His gaze locked on something ahead of him. Something dark, something wrong. A figure stood in the distance, half shadow, half something else. It was hard to focus on it, like looking at a shape just outside the corner of your vision. But then the shape turned, and Daniel knew. He knew it wasn't human. The figure was tall, impossibly tall, its silhouette shifting and bending in ways that made no sense. Its face, if you could even call it that, was smooth, like marble, but it had no features. There were no eyes, no nose, no mouth, and yet Daniel could feel its gaze. He could feel it watching him. "You've crossed the line, Sheriff," the figure said, though its lips didn't move. The voice echoed in his mind, deep and unsettling. "You're ours now." Daniel's heart raced. His legs felt like they were made of lead, but he couldn't move. He couldn't look away. The figure took a slow step toward him, then another. With each step, the air grew colder. The very ground seemed to shift beneath his feet, making the earth beneath him feel like it was moving, alive. "You've always known," the figure whispered, its voice curling around him like smoke. "All of you have known. The forest is patient, but it is not forever." Daniel's pulse quickened. He tried to speak, but his throat was tight, his voice a whisper he couldn't control. "Who are you?" The figure paused, tilting its head. "We are the ones who were here before," it said. "We are the ones who built this place, who gave it life. We are the whispers that have called you. We are the dark beneath the ground, the pull of the earth, the stillness between breaths." Daniel's mind reeled. What was it saying? How could it be real? His heart raced, his breathing shallow. He wanted to run, to scream, to fight. But the pull, the weight of it all, held him in place. "There is no escape from Black Hollow," the figure continued, moving closer. "No one who crosses is ever truly free. You are here, and you will stay here. As long as we call, as long as the forest calls, you belong to us." Daniel's eyes flicked around, his mind racing for any escape, but there was none. The forest had closed in around him, a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. The very trees seemed to lean closer, pressing against him, pulling him into the heart of the hollow. And then it hit him. The stories, the ones he had heard as a child, the disappearances, the names that had been forgotten over time, the ones who had vanished, only to return changed, different in ways that couldn't be explained. The ones who had never returned. The people weren't just taken, they were transformed. And the forest? It didn't just claim the body, it claimed the soul. It was then that Daniel understood the full horror of it. The people who came back, they weren't themselves. Not really. They were shadows of what they had been, echoes of their former lives. They weren't free. They weren't alive. They were simply part of the forest. Daniel stumbled back, his mind whirled, his heart pounding so hard he thought it would burst. "No," he whispered, barely able to speak. "I won't. I can't." The figure raised its hand, and with that motion the ground beneath Daniel's feet shifted. It tilted at an unnatural angle, throwing him to the earth. His hands scraped against the cold, wet soil. He tried to push himself up, but the ground seemed to resist him, pulling him in, swallowing him whole. The whispers grew louder, their voices merging into a single, overwhelming sound, a roar of countless souls crying out, begging, pleading. "You are ours now, Sheriff." And in that moment, as the world around him crumbled into darkness, Daniel knew he would never escape. Not as he was. Not ever again. As Daniel stepped closer, the world around him seemed to disappear. The trees leaned in, forming an almost unnatural canopy overhead. The air was thick and oppressive, filled with a strange, unplaceable scent. It wasn't the smell of decay, at least, not the kind he expected, but something else, something sweet, too sweet. And then he saw it, the clearing, a place he'd only heard of in stories, a place where the trees grew in twisted, unnatural angles, where the earth felt soft beneath your feet as if it were ready to swallow you whole. At the center of the clearing stood a massive stone, a boulder of sorts. but carved with strange, intricate symbols. The carvings were worn, faded with age, but they pulsed with an unsettling energy. Daniel felt it in his chest, a low vibration that matched the thudding of his heart. And there, standing before the stone, was a figure. At first he thought it was a man, tall, impossibly tall, its limbs stretched too far, too long. But then the figure turned, and Daniel saw its face, or what passed for a face. It was smooth, featureless, like a mask made of pale marble. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, blank surface. And then it spoke, but not with words, not with a voice. Daniel felt it in his bones, in the deepest part of him. "We are waiting." The words echoed through him, vibrating in his chest, reaching the very core of his being. He felt his knees go weak, his heart pounding so hard it threatened to break free of his ribs. His mouth went dry. His head swam with the feeling of being too small, too insignificant in the face of something so ancient, so vast. Before he could even react, the figure raised one arm. The air around him shifted, becoming colder, heavier, until it felt as though the world had been suffocated under a thick blanket of ice. The figure's finger pointed toward him, its hand unnaturally long, and then the whispering started. It came from everywhere, from the trees, from the stone, from the ground beneath his feet. It was a chorus, a cacophony of voices, each one familiar, each one haunting. "Come inside, Daniel." 1,000 voices, speaking as one. His breath hitched. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. Every instinct in him screamed to run, to turn and never look back. But the figure didn't let him move. It wasn't the figure that stopped him. It was the whispering. The forest had taken his thoughts. It had taken his will. It had taken him, just as it had taken every person before him. "We are waiting, Daniel." He took a step forward, and then another. He had been warned, and still he moved. But the moment his foot crossed the boundary, the whispering stopped. The silence pressed against him, thick and suffocating, and the world tilted sideways. He was no longer in the clearing. He was somewhere else, somewhere he couldn't name. The morning passed slowly in Ravenshade, the kind of day that drags its feet, stretching out the hours as if time itself wanted to prolong the inevitable. The air was thick with tension, like a storm that hadn't quite broken yet. Sheriff Daniel Graves hadn't moved from his office. The words Carl had spoken echoed in his mind. He wasn't supposed to be here. It wasn't the first time he'd heard it, and he knew it wouldn't be the last. The problem with the town of Ravenshade, with Black Hollow, was that the darkness didn't just take. It replaced. It was a slow, suffocating process. The person who went in was never the same as the one who returned. And those who were taken, well, they never returned at all. That afternoon, Daniel did something he hadn't done in years. He went to Black Hollow. The forest had always been off limits, even to the people who lived in Ravenshade. There were roads that wound around it, paths that skirted its edges, but no one dared to go deeper. No one dared to cross the line. But as Daniel stepped toward the woods, his boots crunching against the wet leaves, he felt the air shift. It was heavier here. The trees pressed close together, blocking out the light. The space between them felt wrong, like it was holding something back. He stopped at the edge, staring into the thickening shadows. He had been told the stories. He had grown up on them. Everyone had. The warnings passed down from one generation to the next, whispered under breaths at night. Don't go too far. Don't listen to the whispers. Don't ever answer the knocks. But as Daniel stood there, he found himself listening. Not to the wind, not to the distant call of birds or the rustle of branches, but to something else. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. A faint knocking, 3 soft taps, the unmistakable sound of someone calling him forward. His breath caught in his throat. The next morning, Sheriff Daniel Graves sat in his office, staring at the telephone on his desk. No calls had come in. No one had reported another disappearance. And yet he knew something had changed. The night before had been a warning, a final chance. The forest was patient, but not forever. A slow knock rattled the door frame. Not 3 taps. Not the rhythm that made his skin crawl. It was Carl Hendricks. His face was pale, eyes hollowed by something Daniel recognized too well. Sleeplessness. Fear. Sheriff. Carl's voice cracked. I think it's my son. Daniel exhaled slowly. He had known it would be someone. Carl stepped inside, his hands shaking at his sides. Matthew started acting strange last night. He wouldn't sleep. He kept staring at the window like he was listening to something. Daniel's gut twisted. Carl's hands clenched into fists. Then, just before dawn, I heard him whispering. Daniel's pulse slowed. What did he say? Carl swallowed hard. He said he wasn't supposed to be here. Silence thickened the air between them. Daniel had heard those words before. They were the same ones Oliver Crane had spoken when he returned after his first disappearance. The same words Eloise Garrett had whispered before she vanished. It meant one thing. Matthew Callahan had already been chosen. Carl's voice was hoarse. Sheriff, what do I do? Daniel didn't have an answer, because deep down he knew the truth. No one could be saved. Once the forest called, it was already too late. The morning after Samuel Callahan disappeared, his parents didn't speak. Harold sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty seat where his son used to sit. Miriam stood by the window, her hands shaking, her eyes scanning the horizon as if she might see him walking back home. She wouldn't. Samuel wasn't coming back. The sheriff, a broad-shouldered man named Daniel Graves, visited them that afternoon. He had been born and raised in Ravenshade, long enough to know how these stories ended. But still, he followed the rules. He asked the questions. When was the last time you saw him? Harold rubbed his hands over his face, exhaling shakily. Last night before bed. Did you hear anything? Did he say anything strange? Miriam's hands clenched against the window frame. The knocking, her voice was hoarse, and the whispers. Daniel stiffened. He didn't ask her to explain. He didn't need to. He already knew. Harold looked up, his eyes hollow. You're not going to look for him, are you? The sheriff was silent. They all knew the truth. The missing weren't missing. They were taken. But even still, even though his heart told him it was pointless, Daniel went through the motions. He gathered a small search party, just enough men to form a cautious line at the forest edge. They didn't step inside. They only called. Samuel? The trees whispered back. The men stood still, listening. The rustling of leaves, the shift of wind, the faintest sound of movement deeper in the woods. One of the men, Carl Hendricks, cleared his throat. You hear that? The others nodded, reluctant. The sound was coming from beyond the first row of trees. A low, rhythmic knocking. 3 slow taps. A pause. Then 3 more. Carl's face paled. That's the sound Samuel made when he played outside my shop, tapping his knuckles on the counter just like that. No one moved. The knocking continued. Daniel took a slow step forward. The earth beneath his boots felt strange, softer than it should have been, as if it wasn't real ground at all. He squinted into the shadows between the trees. Something stood there. Not a person. Not exactly. It was shaped like a person, but its body was wrong. A little too tall, its limbs too long, its neck just slightly tilted, like a marionette caught between strings. The shape didn't move, didn't sway with the wind, like the branches around it, but Daniel knew it was watching them. Then, without warning, it took a step forward. Carl let out a sharp breath, stumbling back. The rest of the men did the same. But Daniel held his ground. The figure stepped closer. And then it whispered. Not out loud. Not through the trees, but inside his head. Sheriff. Daniel flinched. The voice was familiar. Distant, like an old memory. He could feel it winding through his skull, curling around his thoughts, pressing in. "You've been running a long time." His stomach turned. His fingers twitched toward the gun at his belt. But somehow, he knew it wouldn't matter. The voice pressed closer. "You can't keep pretending you don't hear us." Daniel took a shaky breath. He had spent his whole life avoiding this moment, avoiding the woods, avoiding the truth. But it had never mattered. The whispers had always been there. The weight of something just out of sight, the knowledge that the forest was patient, and now it was waiting for him. "Come inside, Daniel." The shape took another step forward. This time, he stepped back. He turned, his pulse pounding in his throat. "We're done here." Carl swallowed hard, glancing toward the trees. "But we're done." No one argued. They left. The knocking stopped as soon as they turned away. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in his chair, gun in his lap, staring at his locked front door. At 3:12 a.m., someone knocked. 3 slow taps, a pause, then 3 more. Daniel didn't move. He didn't answer, but he knew they weren't going to wait much longer. Eloise Garrett was never found, but she was not the last. After her disappearance, the town of Ravenshade did what it had always done, locked their doors, lowered their voices, and pretended not to hear the things that called to them in the dark. But the whispers had grown bolder, more persistent, and they were no longer satisfied with waiting. It was the Callahan family who first realized something was terribly wrong. Harold and Miriam Callahan had lived in Ravenshade for decades. They were old enough to remember when Joseph Carter had returned, when Oliver Crane had stood outside in the rain, whispering that he wasn't supposed to be there. They had lived through the warnings, had obeyed the rule, and yet the forest still came for them. Their youngest son, Samuel, had always been a quiet child. He wasn't like the other boys who ran through the streets or dared each other to step closer to Black Hollow's edge. He stayed inside, sitting on the rug by the fireplace, flipping through pages of books far too advanced for his age. He was thoughtful, observant, and perhaps too aware of the things that lurked just beyond sight. One evening, as Miriam set the table for dinner, she noticed Samuel sitting at the window, staring out at the darkening sky. His hands were folded in his lap, his expression blank. She wiped her hands on her apron, stepping toward him. "What are you looking at, sweetheart?" Samuel didn't move. His small fingers twitched against his knees. "They're standing in the yard," he whispered. A chill ran down Miriam's spine. She glanced out the window, her pulse quickening. The yard was empty. The wind was still. "There's no one there, love." Samuel turned his head, just slightly, looking at her with an expression too old for his 6-year-old face. "Not anymore," he said. Miriam felt something in the room shift. The air thickened, pressing against her chest. She reached for Samuel's hand, but he pulled away. His eyes flickered toward the door. "We shouldn't let them in." Her breath caught. The knock came a second later, soft, deliberate, 3 slow taps against the wood. Harold looked up from the dining table, setting down his fork. They weren't expecting anyone. No one in Ravenshade made unannounced visits after dark. He exchanged a glance with Miriam, her face pale and stiff. Another knock, 3 taps, no urgency, just waiting. Harold rose, chair scraping against the floor. He hesitated before stepping toward the door. Something in his gut twisted, a feeling he hadn't known since childhood, since the old stories his grandmother used to tell. He swallowed hard, pressing his palm against the wood. "Who's there?" Silence. He glanced at Miriam. She was gripping Samuel's shoulders, her knuckles white. The boy's lips barely moved as he murmured something under his breath. Another knock. Harold took a deep breath. He reached for the handle, twisting it slowly. The door creaked open an inch, revealing only darkness beyond the threshold. The porch was empty. No footsteps in the damp earth. No sign that anyone had been there at all. Then he heard it. A whisper, so close it felt like it had come from inside the house. "Let me in." Harold slammed the door, locked it, bolted it. Behind him, Samuel let out a long breath. "They don't like that," the boy murmured. The wind outside howled, shaking the walls. The lanterns flickered. For the first time in their lives, Harold and Miriam felt truly trapped inside their own home. The knocking didn't come again. But that night, as they lay awake in bed, listening to the rain against the windows, they both heard the same thing. A voice just outside the bedroom door. Soft, familiar, impossible. Harold's mother had been dead for 15 years, but still her voice whispered to him in the dark. "Harold, open the door." Neither of them moved. They lay there, barely breathing, staring into the blackness of their room. At some point just before dawn, the whispers faded. The house fell silent again, but Samuel never spoke another word after that night. And by the time the sun rose, he was gone. The front door stood wide open. No footprints, no sign of struggle, just the wind curling through the trees, carrying his name on its breath. After Oliver Crane disappeared for the second time, the town of Ravenshade changed. The streets emptied earlier, curtains drawn tight before sundown. The local pub, once filled with the quiet murmur of conversation, became silent. People no longer spoke of the missing, not because they forgot, but because speaking their names felt like an invitation. The woods were patient. The whispers never stopped. No one knew why some were chosen. It wasn't always the ones who wandered too close. Sometimes it was the ones who had never even stepped near the tree line, the ones who had spent their whole lives avoiding the dark places. But once the whispers started, they never truly ended. Eloise Garrett was one of them. She had grown up in Ravenshade, spending her childhood indoors while other children played outside. Her parents had been strict, but she never minded. She had always felt safer inside. She never set foot near Black Hollow. She never heard the stories. But none of that mattered. The whispers found her anyway. It started when she was 22. She woke one night to the sound of something tapping against her window. The kind of soft, deliberate tapping that made her stomach twist into knots. At first, she thought it was the wind. But when she turned onto her side, she saw something move outside. A shadow standing at the edge of her yard, too far to see clearly, but close enough to know it was watching her. Her breath caught in her throat. She squeezed her eyes shut, telling herself it was nothing, that it would be gone in the morning. And in a way it was. The next night it was closer. She never saw it move, never saw it step forward. But each night it was there, standing just a little closer to the house. The whispers started soon after. At first she thought she was imagining them, a trick of the wind, the way it curled through the cracks in her old wooden house. But then the whispers began to form words, soft, beckoning, familiar. They sounded like her mother. "Eloise, come outside." She hadn't heard her mother's voice in years. She had died when Eloise was a child, long before she was old enough to remember what her voice truly sounded like. But somehow she knew it wasn't real. She ignored it. She ignored the shadow. She ignored the whispers. But the thing about Black Hollow is that it does not like to be ignored. One night she woke to the sound of her front door creaking open. She sat up in bed, her heart hammering. The whispering had stopped. The rain outside had slowed to a faint drizzle. The air in the house felt thick, unmoving, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Then she heard the floorboards creak, slow, measured, a single step at a time. It was inside. She reached for the lamp beside her bed, her hands trembling as she flicked the switch. The light didn't turn on. Another step, then another. Eloise didn't scream. She didn't move. She just listened. Listened as the footsteps reached her doorway, as they paused just beyond the threshold. And then she heard it, her mother's voice, closer than ever, a breath away. "Eloise, come with me." The next morning, her house was empty. The front door was wide open, rainwater pooling at the threshold. Her bed was untouched, the covers neatly folded as if she had never slept there at all. She was gone. No footprints, no sign of struggle. Just an empty room and the soft sound of the wind through the trees. The town knew they wouldn't find her. They didn't even try. They knew where she had gone. The story of Joseph Carter never left Ravenshade. Even now, decades later, his name is whispered in the dim glow of lantern light, in hushed conversations over creaking wooden tables at the town's only pub. The elders say his return was not an accident. The forest does not give back what it takes, it only trades. Joseph had been missing for 25 years, but those who saw him that night swore his hair had barely grayed, his face unchanged except for the haunted emptiness in his eyes. The night he disappeared for the second time, his footprints in the damp earth led straight back into Black Hollow. They stopped just beyond the first row of trees, vanishing into nothing. No drag marks, no signs of struggle, just gone. After that, no one ventured near the woods, not even in the daylight. It didn't matter. The forest had a way of reaching out. It started small, scratching sounds at the windows late at night, soft at first, barely noticeable beneath the rain, but persistent. Then came the voices. They weren't loud or menacing, just a whisper, like someone speaking from another room, just close enough to catch a word or two, but never enough to understand. Then the children started sleepwalking. No one knew exactly when it began, but soon parents would wake in the dead of night to find their sons and daughters standing at the door, fingers curled around the handle, eyes open but unseen. Some were found halfway to the woods, barefoot in the wet grass, their small bodies shivering, their lips moving, as if speaking to someone only they could hear. When asked what they were doing, their answers were always the same. They called my name. The town held a meeting. The mayor, a thin, graying man with tired eyes, declared a curfew. No one was to leave their homes after sundown. The children's windows were nailed shut, doors locked and barred. But it made no difference. One night, a boy named Oliver Crane vanished from his bed. His mother had tucked him in only hours before. There was no sound, no forced entry. Just an open window, the curtains swaying in the breeze, and the whisper of his name fading into the trees. The search lasted for weeks. Hundreds of footprints led into the woods. None led out. Then, on the 13th night, Oliver came back. His mother found him standing outside in the rain, drenched, barefoot, staring at the house as if it were unfamiliar. She ran to him, pulling him into her arms, sobbing with relief. But when she looked into his face, her breath caught in her throat. His eyes were dull, empty, as if the light inside him had been snuffed out. He was ice cold, though he had been gone for nearly 2 weeks. And when he spoke, his voice was soft. Hollow. I'm not supposed to be here. She begged him to tell her what had happened, where he had been. But Oliver only shook his head. They let me go. But I can still hear them. They're waiting. She tried to keep him inside after that, never letting him out of her sight. But every night, she would wake to find him standing at the window, staring into the darkness, lips moving as if whispering a conversation. Then, one morning, he was gone again. This time, he didn't come back. After Oliver, the town stopped searching for the missing. It was no longer a matter of finding them. They knew where they had gone, and they knew deep down that they had chosen to go. Black Hollow wasn't just taking them. It was calling them home. They say the woods whisper at night. Some claim it's just the wind twisting through the trees, but those who have stepped too close know the truth. Something else is out there, watching, waiting, calling in voices you almost recognize. The town of Ravenshade is small, the kind of place where people lock their doors early and whisper warnings to their children. At its edge stands Black Hollow Forest, a vast stretch of ancient trees that seem untouched by time. The deeper you go, the darker it becomes, even at midday. The locals call it the Whispering Woods. They say the wind doesn't just move through the branches, it speaks. For generations, it was nothing more than a story, a tale told to keep children from wandering too far. Then people started to disappear. Elliot Graves was 14 when he vanished. His footprints led into the trees but never came out. Search parties called his name for weeks. The only answer was the wind, carrying back a whisper that sounded eerily like his voice. Marla Henshaw was next, a local historian. She believed the stories were nonsense, just fear passed down through generations. Determined to prove everyone wrong, she entered the forest one evening with nothing but a lantern. She never returned. The only thing they found was her notebook, lying open on a moss-covered stone. The final entry was brief. The whispers are not the wind. They know my name. They are calling me close. For years the disappearances continued, until one night, someone came back. Joseph Carter had been missing for 25 years when he walked out of the forest barefoot, wearing the same clothes he had on the day he vanished. He looked almost unchanged, as if only days had passed. His eyes were hollow, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I was never alone in there," he said. "They told me to stay, but they let me go so I could bring someone back." He refused to say more. He locked himself in his family's old home, covering the windows, mumbling to himself. On the third night, his sister heard the front door creak open. By the time she reached him, he was gone. His footprints led back into the trees. No one ever saw him again. Even now, people in Ravenshade swear they hear voices at night, soft, beckoning whispers carried on the wind. Some say if you listen too closely, you'll hear your own name, and if you follow the sound into the trees, you may never return. He looked the same, yet different. His skin was pale, his eyes hollow, like a man who hadn't seen the light of day in far too long. His posture was strange, stiff, almost robotic, as though he were moving without the instinct of a human being. "Carl," Daniel croaked, his throat burning. What's happening?" Carl's lips curled into a faint, twisted smile. "We've been waiting for you, Sheriff." His voice was flat, empty, as if it came from a place far beyond him. It wasn't Carl anymore. It couldn't be. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, his pulse quickening. This wasn't right. This wasn't Carl. "You've crossed the line too," Carl said, stepping closer, his movements stiff and unnaturally smooth. His eyes, those hollow, empty eyes, seemed to look right through Daniel. "You're one of us now." "No," Daniel whispered, his head spinning, his vision blurred. "No, I'm still me." Carl reached out, placing a cold hand on Daniel's shoulder. It felt like ice. No, colder than ice. It felt like a part of the earth itself, an ancient thing that had never known warmth. "You're not you anymore," Carl said. "None of us are. We belong to Black Hollow now. We are part of it." A wave of dizziness washed over Daniel. His thoughts scrambled. His body felt as though it were dissolving into the air itself. He fought to hold on to who he had been, but the force around him, the pull of Black Hollow, was too strong. And then he understood. This was the forest's true power. It didn't just take people's lives, it took their essence, their very being. It didn't care about the flesh. It didn't care about the body. It cared about the soul. And once it had that, once it had you, it never let go. Daniel stumbled back, his mind spiraling into darkness. The whispers surged again, louder now, like a torrent of voices crashing against his thoughts. He could feel them pulling him in, tugging at the very fabric of his existence. It wasn't just his body they wanted. It was his soul. "We are one," the forest seemed to say, its voice 1,000 mouths all speaking in unison. "You were always one with us." As the darkness closed in, as the earth opened up to swallow him whole, Daniel knew he was lost. He had always been lost. Black Hollow had always been waiting. And now it had him. Daniel's mind was slipping away, his body sinking into the very earth of Black Hollow. The whispers pressed against him from all sides, tugging at his consciousness like invisible fingers reaching into the deepest corners of his soul. His chest heaved with shallow breaths, but each inhale felt like an eternity. Every exhale a weight he could no longer bear. Carl, no, not Carl, moved closer, his eyes hollow, his smile unnervingly wide. He was one of them now, one of the twisted remnants of the people who had once lived in Ravenshade, who had crossed into the Hollow and never returned. They were no longer truly alive, no longer truly human. They were the hollowed-out shells of people, their souls consumed by the forest, their bodies now nothing more than vessels for something darker. The shadowy figure, the tall, faceless creature, stepped forward, its presence making the very air around them vibrate. It was the force behind Black Hollow, the heart of the curse that had ensnared Ravenshade for generations. It had lived for as long as the land itself, waiting for those foolish enough to cross its boundary. And now, it was watching Daniel, waiting for him to give in. "You will become one with us," the figure whispered, its voice not coming from its mouth but from every direction at once. The trees whispered it, the stones murmured it, the very earth under Daniel's feet seemed to echo the words. "You are already ours." Daniel's body jerked, his legs unsteady, but his mind was still fighting. He couldn't give in. He couldn't let the forest win. There had to be something. There had to be a way out. His fingers curled into the mud beneath him, his nails digging into the wet earth. The cold seeped deeper into his bones, and he felt as if the darkness was slowly pulling him apart. His pulse thudded in his ears, each beat another reminder that his time was running out. The tall figure moved closer, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. It reached out with one long, bony hand, and Daniel flinched, trying to pull away. But there was nowhere to go. The forest had him. "There is no escape," the figure said. "You are already part of us. You are already in the fold." Daniel's vision blurred. As the figure's hand hovered over him, he could feel the power radiating from it, feel the weight of the forest itself pressing down on him. The whispers intensified, becoming a chorus of voices that drowned out everything else. The world felt like it was breaking apart, pieces of his reality slipping through his fingers. And then something shifted. It was subtle at first, like a crack forming in the darkness, a faint light beginning to push through the heavy fog. Daniel's mind grasped at it, clinging to that fleeting spark. It was the faintest memory, a whisper of something long forgotten, something he had heard as a child. The line. It was a fragment of an old story, an old legend. The line that separated Ravenshade from Black Hollow. It was a warning, and Daniel knew what it meant. If he could find the line, the boundary, he could break free. The darkness had already begun to consume him, but there was still a thread of hope. He could still escape the Hollow's grip, at least for a time. "The line is not here, Sheriff," the figure murmured, as if it had read his thoughts. "The line was never here. The line was always in you." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. His chest tightened, and he gasped for air. The figure's words sank into him, and a cold, sick realization began to settle over him. The forest wasn't just claiming his body. It was claiming his soul piece by piece. The line, the boundary, wasn't just a physical place. It was a part of who he was. The forest had blurred that line, twisted it, made it a part of the very essence of his being. He wasn't just lost in the woods. He was becoming part of them. The figure moved even closer, its presence suffocating. The ground beneath Daniel's feet began to give way, as though the earth itself was breaking apart, opening to swallow him whole. He could feel his body weakening, his limbs losing their strength, but he refused to let go. He had to fight. "You are no longer human," the figure said. "You are part of us now." Daniel clenched his fists, pushing against the ground. His fingers scraped against the mud, but there was no solid ground to hold on to. The earth was shifting, and it felt like the whole world was falling into darkness. "Fight all you want," the figure whispered, "but it is futile. You are ours now." Daniel felt his strength fading, his body growing numb. His breath came in ragged gasps, his pulse slowing, as if his very life force was being drained by the forest's endless hunger. But then he felt it. A flicker, a pulse. The memory surged forward again. The line. He had crossed it, yes. He had stepped into Black Hollow. But what if the line wasn't just a place? What if the line was in his mind? What if it was something he could control? He thought of the stories, of the ones who had tried to escape and failed, the ones who had vanished without a trace. And yet, there had to be something. There had to be a way to break free. He gripped that flicker, that tiny spark, and he pulled. With every ounce of strength he could muster, he pulled himself back. He fought against the weight of the forest. He fought against the whispers. He fought against the darkness. He pushed, and for a moment, just a brief moment, he felt the line. It was a thin thread, a whisper of light in the vast darkness, but it was enough. Enough to make him realize that there was still a piece of him that hadn't been swallowed, a piece of his soul that was still his own. The ground beneath him shook, the trees groaned, the earth screamed, and then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the darkness stilled. Daniel's heart raced as the pressure on his chest lifted. The whispers faltered, then faded, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was silence. He was free, but not for long. The forest would come for him again, and next time it would be harder to escape. But for now, Daniel had won, and that was enough. Daniel had thought he'd escaped, thought he had won, when the whispers had faded, when the pressure on his chest had lifted. But as the minutes passed, he realized that the stillness around him wasn't peace. It was a momentary pause. He wasn't free. Not truly. The forest had released its grip, but only to toy with him, to give him the illusion of victory. The darkness still lingered in the shadows, watching him, waiting for the inevitable return. And Daniel knew that his time was running out. Every step he took was labored. The ground beneath his feet felt unfamiliar now, like he was walking on something that wasn't quite solid, as if the earth itself had been altered by the hollow's influence. The trees stretched taller, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms, grasping for him, their leaves whispering words that only they could understand. The air felt thicker, colder, more oppressive. The forest was alive in ways that Daniel had never imagined, its heartbeat intertwined with his own, a pulse that seemed to echo from the deepest parts of the land. A movement caught the corner of his eye. He turned quickly but saw nothing, just the wind shifting through the trees. But that was enough. His skin prickled, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something was out there. He pressed on, ignoring the rising panic clawing at his chest. He couldn't afford to lose control. Not now. He needed to find a way out, a way to end it. It wasn't just Black Hollow that threatened him now. It was the knowledge, the truth that had begun to surface. The stories his father had told him when he was a child, the warnings from the elders, the cursed history of Ravenshade. It was all flooding back now, each detail more terrifying than the last. Black Hollow wasn't just a place. It was a living entity, a predator, and Daniel was its prey. But there was something else, something darker that Daniel had barely begun to understand. There was a reason Ravenshade had been abandoned. There was a reason the villagers had left. The history of the place wasn't just filled with fear, it was filled with sacrifice. In the quiet moments of his escape, when his mind had stopped fighting the forest, a name had surfaced, the Keeper. The Keeper was the heart of Black Hollow, the one who controlled the curse, the one who kept the balance between the forest and the souls it claimed. And the Keeper was not a man, nor a woman, nor any mortal being. It was a force, a presence that bound the Hollow's magic to the land, a force that had existed for centuries, watching, waiting, and Daniel had just unwittingly crossed into the keeper's domain. The faintest sound broke his thoughts. Something faint, but unmistakable. A footstep. He froze, his breath hitching in his throat. A shadow moved in the corner of his vision, and then another. More whispers, louder this time. No, not this time. Daniel turned, his feet stumbling on the uneven ground. He had to move. He had to get out before whatever was lurking in the forest reached him. But as he stumbled forward, his foot caught on something cold and smooth. His eyes darted down and he froze. At his feet lay a stone. It was large, too large to be accidental, and it was covered in symbols, strange, ancient markings, twisted and incomprehensible, carved into the surface. A circle, and inside it, runes he couldn't begin to understand. The edges of the stone were slick with something that shimmered like dew, but there was an unnatural quality to it, like it had been waiting for him. He knelt down, instinctively reaching out to touch it. As his fingers brushed the surface, the ground beneath him rumbled. A low, deep hum reverberated through the earth, vibrating in his bones. The trees groaned in unison, and the wind picked up, howling as though it were warning him. And then, out of the darkness, a voice. "You should not have come here." It wasn't a whisper, it wasn't a shout. It was simply a statement, a truth that had always been. It was the voice of the keeper, and it was everywhere, in the trees, in the ground, in the air itself. It was the voice of Black Hollow. Daniel stood up, his knees trembling. He couldn't see the keeper, but he could feel it now, its presence surrounding him, pressing in on him from every direction. He could hear it breathing, though he couldn't tell if it was his own breath or something far darker. "You've crossed the boundary," the voice continued, softer now, almost affectionate, as if it were speaking to a child. "You've stepped into my domain, and now there is no turning back." Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. He was in the keeper's grasp now, trapped in a place where time itself seemed to bend and twist. There was no exit, no safe haven. Not unless he could find a way to break the curse. And the only way to do that, he knew, was to confront the keeper. His mind raced. He couldn't stand here forever. He had to face what had been waiting for him. There was no escape now, not unless he did anything to fight back. He took a deep breath, gathering what little strength he had left, and stepped closer to the stone. "What do you want from me?" Daniel asked, his voice shaking but resolute. "What is this place?" The air grew colder, and for a moment all the sounds of the forest disappeared. The wind stopped, the rain halted, and then the keeper spoke. "You are a part of it now. You always were." Daniel's stomach twisted, and he staggered back, his feet tangling in the roots that suddenly seemed to reach for him. He was trapped. There was no escape. The ground beneath him cracked open, and from the darkness, something moved. A shape, long and dark, rose from the earth. The keeper. It was an ancient being, wrapped in shadows, its form shifting with every step it took, its presence pressing down on Daniel's chest like a weight he couldn't bear. Its eyes, or rather the empty spaces where eyes should have been, stared down at him, hollow and void of any mercy. "You cannot fight me," the keeper whispered. "You belong to me now." Daniel's heart pounds wildly in his chest, each beat a painful reminder that he's still alive, but for how long? The keeper's shadow seems to wrap around him like an impenetrable veil, drawing him deeper into the darkness. Every step the creature takes causes the very ground beneath him to tremble, as though the earth itself is alive, responding to its master's will. The keeper's form shifts and writhes, a shape neither fully human nor fully monstrous, its outline always just beyond comprehension. It is the embodiment of Black Hollow, a reflection of the land itself, dark, twisted, ancient, and merciless, and it is here now, looming over Daniel, its presence consuming him. "You are mine," the keeper's voice hisses, the words curling around him like a serpent, tightening with every passing second. You have crossed into my domain, and now you will stay forever. Daniel's throat tightens, his legs shaking with the weight of fear and exhaustion. His body feels heavy, as though the air itself is pressing down on him, making it harder to breathe. He stumbles backward, instinctively trying to escape, but the forest itself shifts to trap him. The trees groan, their limbs curling inward, closing off every possible path. He is surrounded. He's running out of time. Desperation surges within him, a frantic surge of adrenaline that forces him to keep moving, keep fighting. He thinks of his family, of his life back in Ravenshade. They were all gone now. Everyone who had ever come into this cursed place was lost to it. The history of Ravenshade had been buried under the weight of Black Hollow's ancient curse, and now he was part of that history. A forgotten soul destined to fade away into the darkness. But Daniel refuses to accept that fate. His hand shoots out, grasping blindly for anything he can use to defend himself, to break free of the grip that the Keeper holds over him. His fingers brush against something cold stone. He looks down, his eyes wild with panic, and sees the same strange stone he had tripped over earlier. The same stone covered in runes, its surface now glowing faintly, pulsing with a strange, otherworldly energy. The stone is a symbol, he realizes, the key to understanding this place. It is connected to the very heart of the curse, perhaps even the source of it. The Keeper is tied to this stone, to this very earth, and its power is bound by these markings. You think you can break me, the Keeper taunts, its voice a low, sinister whisper that fills the air. You think you can escape? You cannot escape what you are already part of. Daniel's eyes narrow as he presses his palm against the cold surface of the stone. There is no more room for hesitation, no more time for doubts. If this stone is the key, then he must find a way to unlock it. His fingers press harder into the stone, tracing the ancient runes, the symbols that make no sense but feel so familiar now. His pulse quickens as a warmth begins to spread through his hand, the stone beginning to vibrate beneath his touch. The air grows thick with the presence of the Keeper, but Daniel refuses to look away from the stone. The whispers are louder now, a cacophony of voices, all calling to him, urging him to surrender. He can feel the weight of their voices pressing on his chest, trying to suffocate him. I told you, the Keeper says, its voice rising, you are mine. The stone beneath Daniel's hand shudders, its glow intensifying, and suddenly he feels something, a pulse, a beat, like the heartbeat of the forest itself. And then, the stone cracks. A deep rumbling sound erupts from the stone, and the forest groans in response, as though it is waking from a deep slumber. The trees tremble, and the ground beneath Daniel's feet shifts, as if the very fabric of Black Hollow is tearing itself apart. The Keeper roars, its form flickering, its presence faltering. The earth beneath Daniel cracks wide open, and he's pulled down into the depths, into the void. But he grabs the stone, holding onto it with everything he has. He doesn't know what will happen next, but it's his only chance. The stone in his hand pulses again, brighter now as though it is alive, and then the world goes silent. All at once, the forest stills, the wind dies down, the whispers cease. The darkness that had hung over him like a suffocating blanket breaks. Daniel's heart hammers in his chest, his breath ragged as he stares at the stone in his hand. The Keeper is gone for now. The silence is deafening. He can feel the weight of its absence, a strange, hollow emptiness in the air where its presence once was. But Daniel knows. He knows the Keeper hasn't truly gone. This was only a momentary victory. The battle is far from over, but for now he has a moment of peace. His hands tremble as he clutches the stone, the glowing runes still pulsing with power, like the last remnant of the curse. He doesn't know how long he has before the Keeper returns, but he knows he can't stay here, not in the heart of Black Hollow. Slowly, cautiously, he turns away from the stone, his eyes scanning the desolate forest around him. The trees are still and lifeless, their once twisted branches now seeming to hang limply in the thick, stifling air. The rain has stopped, leaving the air heavy with the smell of damp earth. But the darkness lingers. The hollow's curse is still alive, still waiting for him. And Daniel knows, deep down, that he has only just begun to understand the true power of Black Hollow and the price it demands. He clutches the stone tightly in his hand, determination flashing in his eyes. This fight isn't over. It's only just beginning. Daniel's heart races as he stands motionless, staring into the heart of Black Hollow. The very ground beneath him seems to be alive, shifting and groaning in subtle ways, as if it is not entirely solid. The stone he holds in his hand continues to glow faintly, its light cutting through the surrounding darkness. It is both a beacon and a burden, a sign of his tenuous victory and the price that will come for defying the keep. For a brief moment he wonders if he should leave the forest, turn and run, find a way out before the darkness swallows him whole. But deep down he knows there is no escape. Not now, not after what he has already witnessed. The forest won't let him go, not until it's ready, and the keeper's warning echoes in his mind. "You are mine." Daniel clenches his jaw, pushing the fear back down into the depths of his chest. He refuses to be the keeper's prisoner. He will not fade into the history of those lost to the Hollow, those whose names had long since been erased by time. He will fight, but how? The keeper is a force, something older than the land itself, a presence tied to the very bones of Black Hollow. There's no logic to it, no way to reason with it. The only way to survive is to unravel its secrets, and that means venturing deeper into the Hollow. Every step Daniel takes feels heavier. The shadows in the trees grow longer, stretching to greet him, as if they too are alive and watching. The eerie quiet of the forest is only broken by the occasional rustling of leaves or the distant croak of an unseen bird. The creatures of Black Hollow waiting for their chance to take. With every passing moment, Daniel feels the weight of the Hollow pressing in on him, its malevolent force tugging at his very soul, attempting to pull him deeper into the abyss. The ground shifts beneath him, as though the forest itself is alive, a living organism that is both watching and waiting. Daniel cannot afford to be distracted. He must keep moving, keep searching for any clue that might lead him to understanding the Keeper's true power. What is the connection between the stone he holds and the curse that binds this place? The answers lie within Black Hollow, and he is determined to find them. He walks for what feels like hours, the darkness never lifting, the trees growing thicker, more oppressive. The air grows colder, and the scent of decay hangs heavier in the atmosphere. It's as if the forest has swallowed all light and hope, leaving only an endless expanse of despair. Then, ahead of him, a faint glow catches his eye. It's not the light from the stone in his hand, but something else. Something far more ancient, more powerful. His pulse quickens as he moves toward the source of the light. He steps into a clearing, the ground beneath him soft and spongy, like the forest floor is soaked with something far older than water. In the center of the clearing stands a massive, twisted tree. Its bark is blackened and gnarled, its roots crawling like snakes across the earth. From within the tree, the faint light pulses, and Daniel feels an overwhelming sense of wrongness emanating from it. This is it, the heart of Black Hollow, the source of the curse. At its base, the stone-like structure protrudes from the ground, cracked and weathered, just like the one he had seen earlier. The runes on its surface glow faintly, echoing the same pulsing rhythm that he feels in the stone he holds. It's as if the stones are connected, as if they are part of some greater hidden network, each one feeding into the other, binding the forest and the Keeper together. A shadow moves within the tree, and Daniel's breath catches in his throat. "You should not have come here." The voice is low, familiar, but distorted by time and malice. It's the Keeper. It's not the same whisper he had heard earlier, but something more physical, more present. The Keeper's essence is here in the heart of the hollow, and it has been watching him all along. A shape materializes from within the twisted branches of the tree. A figure, human-eyed but distorted, like a reflection in a cracked mirror. It is clothed in shadows, its eyes empty voids, staring directly at Daniel. The air grows colder still, and Daniel's breath becomes visible, clouds of vapor forming in front of him. The Keeper's form flickers, ever shifting, never fully solid. "Why are you here?" the Keeper asks, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "What do you hope to find?" Daniel's hands shake, but he forces himself to speak. "I'm here to end this, to stop the curse that binds this place. I won't be your prisoner." The Keeper laughs, a sound that reverberates through the air like a distant thunderclap. "You cannot escape what you are already a part of. The curse is as old as this land, as old as time itself. You cannot break it, Daniel. No one can." The figure's form ripples and warps, like smoke in the wind. It reaches out, extending a hand toward him, its fingers elongated and twisting unnaturally. Daniel steps back, but the Keeper's presence presses in around him, suffocating him. "Everyone who enters Black Hollow belongs to it," the Keeper says, its voice cold and suffused with an eerie finality. "And you will join the others, lost in the void between worlds, forever." Daniel feels the pull, the weight of the curse tightening around his chest. His lungs burn, but he knows he cannot back down now. The Keeper's words echo in his mind, but he knows there is still a way out, a way to break the curse. He can feel it deep in his bones, in the stone that pulses in his hand, in the air that presses against his skin. "Not everyone," Daniel whispers, the words leaving his mouth before he even fully understands them. The Keeper tilts its head, its expression unreadable. "Not everyone?" it asks, its voice dripping with disdain. "Do you truly believe you can defy the forces of nature, that you can rewrite the rules of fate?" Daniel stands tall, summoning all his strength. "I don't have to rewrite fate," he says, gripping the stone tightly. "I just have to break it." The Keeper's laughter fades into a low growl, its shadow flickering like a flame struggling to stay alive. It reaches out again, but this time, Daniel is ready. He holds the stone above his head, and as it begins to glow brighter, the Keeper's form begins to distort, warping like a reflection in broken glass. The ground beneath Daniel's feet shakes violently, and he can feel the air crackling with power. The trees around him sway, their branches snapping like bones in the wind. The light from the stone grows brighter, until it is blinding, consuming everything around him. The Keeper's voice screams in rage, but it is swallowed by the deafening sound of the earth tearing apart. Daniel's heart pounds in his chest, his body trembling from the strain of the encounter. The stone in his hand feels heavier now, its glow faint but steady. He doesn't know how much time has passed since the Keeper's form warped into the void, but the forest around him seems unchanged, as if nothing had happened at all. The air is thick with tension, the kind of silence that presses against your skin like a weight. He can feel the curse, the hollow, alive beneath his feet. It has not been vanquished, only delayed, and Daniel knows that what he's done will not stop it. The Keeper's power still lingers, like a smoldering ember, waiting for a gust of wind to reignite the flames. But where do you go when the enemy is the very land you stand on? The question gnaws at him, but he doesn't have the answers yet. He can feel the pull of the hollow in his chest, as though the land itself is trying to drag him back into its depths. He tightens his grip on the stone, willing himself not to falter, not to succumb to the weight of Black Hollow's curse. He takes a deep breath and scans the clearing around him. The massive, gnarled tree that had housed the Keeper's presence still stands before him, its twisted branches reaching out like dark fingers, groping for the sky. It's unnatural, its presence wrong in a way he can't explain. There is something more here, something hidden beneath the surface. He knows it. With hesitant steps, Daniel approaches the base of the tree. Drawn by an almost magnetic pull, the ground beneath him softens, and the air grows colder, a chill that seeps into his bones. The runes on the stone he holds pulse again, brighter this time, as though responding to the tree itself. At the base of the tree, the earth shifts. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ground splits apart, revealing a hidden entrance. An underground passage obscured by centuries of decay. The scent of damp earth and something older, fouler, rises from within. The hollow is alive, breathing, waiting. Daniel hesitates for only a moment before stepping forward. There's no turning back now. If the keeper is to be stopped, if this curse is ever to end, the answers lie in the depths of Black Hollow. He lowers himself into the narrow passage, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. The air is thick with the scent of rot and decay, and each breath feels like inhaling the very essence of the forest. The walls of the passage are damp, slick with moisture, and he can hear the faint drip of water somewhere deeper inside. The deeper he goes, the more suffocating the atmosphere becomes. The light from the stone in his hand barely cuts through the inky blackness, and the silence is absolute. There is no sound but his own breathing and the distant, hollow echo of his footsteps. Daniel's thoughts race. He can feel the pull of the curse, tugging at his mind, urging him to turn back. The keeper's words still echo in his ears, whispering in the darkness, "You are mine." But he refuses. He moves deeper into the passage, his hand tightening around the stone as if it will anchor him to reality. The further he travels, the more oppressive the air becomes. It's as though the hollow itself is trying to swallow him whole. And then, just as his resolve begins to falter, he sees it, a faint, flickering light in the distance. It's soft at first, like a dying ember, but it grows stronger with each step he takes. He quickens his pace, eager for anything that might guide him through the suffocating darkness. As he draws closer, the light sharpens into something clearer, a symbol. Carved into the wall of the passage, the symbol glows with an eerie greenish hue, pulsating like a heartbeat. It's not a rune he recognizes, but it feels familiar, almost as if it's meant for him, like a hidden message buried deep within his subconscious. His pulse quickens as he reaches out to touch it, his fingers grazing the surface of the symbol. The moment his skin makes contact with the wall, the light erupts, flooding the passage with a blinding glow. Daniel recoils, shielding his eyes with his arm as the light intensifies. For a brief moment he feels his body jerk forward, as though he is being pulled into the very core of the hollow. But then, as suddenly as it began, the light fades, leaving only the dull hum of energy in the air. The passage around him shifts. The walls begin to change, the rough stone giving way to smoother surfaces, as though the very earth itself is transforming, reshaping itself. The passage is widening, becoming more expansive, and Daniel is led into a vast cavern. At the center of the cavern, suspended in mid-air, is a stone altar, intricately carved with the same runes that were etched into the stone he holds. The altar is bathed in an unnatural glow, and as Daniel steps closer, he can feel the energy radiating from it, a power that seems ancient beyond measure. It's here. This is where the curse began. This is the heart of Black Hollow. As he approaches the altar, he can see that there are secrets etched into the surface of the stone, symbols, words, and diagrams that speak of an ancient ritual. The markings are foreign to him, but there is something about them that feels like a key. The stone in his hand hums again, its energy responding to the altar, as though they are connected. He stands before the altar, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The air crackles with electricity, and he feels the very pulse of the hollow beneath his feet. This is it, the final step. The answers lie within these markings. The curse, the keeper, the land itself. They are all tied to this place, and with the stone, he can finally understand what must be done to stop it. But as his hand reaches out to touch the altar, a low growl rumbles from the shadows. Daniel freezes, his heart stuttering in his chest. He turns, his eyes scanning the darkness around him, and he feels a cold shiver run down his spine. The keeper's voice echoes again, louder this time, its presence filling the cavern. "You will never escape me, Daniel." The ground shakes, and the shadows begin to move. From the darkness, a shape emerges. The keeper, its form flickering in and out of existence like a nightmare made flesh. It is more terrifying now, its power amplified, its eyes glowing with a malice that sends waves of dread crashing over Daniel. The battle is not over. It has only just begun. And this time, the keeper is ready. Daniel's breath catches in his throat as he faces the keeper. The creature's form shifts and sways, its features distorted, flickering in and out like a shadow that can't decide what shape to take. Its eyes, black and endless, lock onto him, piercing through him as though it can see every doubt, every fear buried deep inside. "You cannot escape me," the keeper growls, its voice a low rasp that vibrates through the very walls of the cavern. "I am the hollow. I am the land, the curse, the darkness. You are nothing but a fleeting moment, a whisper in the wind." Daniel takes a step back, his heart pounding in his chest. He knows this is it, the final moment. There's no more running, no more hiding. The keeper will not be swayed by words or pleas. This will be a battle of wills, a clash of power that will determine the fate of Black Hollow. His fingers tighten around the stone, feeling its weight, the subtle hum of energy that resonates through him. It's not just a stone, it's a key, a link to something older than time itself. It's the only thing that can stand against the keeper's darkness. With every breath, the pressure in the cavern grows. The air feels thick, suffocating, pressing down on Daniel as though the very earth is trying to crush him under its weight. The keeper's laughter fills the air, low and mocking. "You think this stone will save you? You think you can stand against me? I am beyond your understanding, beyond your strength." Daniel doesn't respond. He can't. Words are useless now. The keeper is right about one thing. He is nothing compared to the ancient, overwhelming power that it commands. But he isn't alone, not anymore. He steps forward, his legs trembling but his resolve unyielding. The keeper's form flickers, its eyes narrowing as it watches him. It's almost as if the keeper is testing him, waiting for him to falter. Daniel raises the stone high above his head, its glow flaring brightly. The keeper recoils slightly, the light from the stone cutting through the darkness like a blade. Daniel can feel it, the connection between the stone and the keeper. It's not just the keeper he is facing. It's the very curse that has bound this land for centuries. With a guttural growl, the keeper lunges, its dark form shifting and blurring, faster than Daniel can comprehend. The cavern shakes violently as the keeper closes the distance between them in a blur of shadow. But Daniel is ready. He slams the stone into the ground, the force reverberating through the cavern. The moment it touches the earth, the light from the stone flares out in all directions, its brilliance blinding. The keeper screams, its form twisting and writhing as though the very light itself is burning it away. Daniel feels the power of the stone surge through him, a torrent of ancient energy flooding his body. His limbs feel heavy, his senses sharp and raw. The world around him blurs as the energy of the stone connects him to something far beyond his comprehension, something deep within the hollow. The keeper's curse, its dark influence, is woven into the very fabric of this land. But the stone is a key, a conduit for something that can break that curse. The keeper staggers back, its form flickering and fading, as though the very light from the stone is consuming it. But it won't go down so easily. With a roar, the keeper pushes forward, its form solidifying once again, its shadowy arms reaching out to envelop Daniel. The air crackles with an electric charge, and the ground shakes violently as the keeper makes its final desperate attempt to seize control. But Daniel does not flinch. He holds the stone firm, the light from it flashing brighter with every second. "You cannot fight what you are," the keeper snarls, its voice dripping with venom. "You are part of this place now. You will never escape me." Daniel's eyes narrow. He's been trapped in Black Hollow for too long. Physically, emotionally, mentally. The keeper's words have power, yes, but they are lies. He doesn't belong to this place. He doesn't belong to the curse, and he certainly doesn't belong to the keeper. This isn't just a battle for survival, it's a battle for his soul, for his freedom, for every lost soul trapped within Black Hollow. He digs his feet into the earth, summoning every ounce of strength he has left. The stone in his hand pulses with energy, the light growing brighter, more intense. The keeper recoils, but its form is still a mass of shadow, its power as strong as ever. But Daniel knows what he must do. He raises the stone high once more, chanting words he doesn't fully understand, words that come to him instinctively, words born of the hollow itself, of the curse that binds it. The energy from the stone flows through him like wildfire, igniting every nerve in his body, filling him with a power that feels both alien and familiar at the same time. The keeper's form begins to dissolve, its shadowy limbs flickering in and out of existence. Daniel's voice grows louder as he repeats the chant, the power of the stone amplifying his every word. "You are nothing," he says, his voice growing steady and strong. "You are nothing." The keeper howls, but its cries are fading, swallowed by the light. Its form dissipates, breaking apart like smoke caught in the wind, the very air around it crackling with energy. And then, with one final deafening scream, the keeper shatters, its essence scattering into the ether, leaving behind only silence. For a moment, everything is still. The cavern, once thick with the weight of the curse, is now eerily quiet. The stone in Daniel's hand flickers one last time before it fades, its glow dimming to nothing. Daniel collapses to his knees, exhausted but alive. The ground beneath him trembles, but it is different now. Lighter, less oppressive, as if the very earth itself is breathing a sigh of relief. The curse of Black Hollow is broken, but even as the shadows of the cavern retreat, Daniel knows this is only the beginning. The hollow is vast, its reach endless. The keeper may be gone, but the land still carries its dark history. There are other forces at play here, other mysteries to uncover, other horrors to face, and Daniel, for all his trials, is only at the edge of what Black Hollow truly is. For now, though, he's won. The keeper is no more, and Black Hollow will never be the same. The keeper's form has dissipated into nothing, but its presence lingers like an unsettling aftertaste. Black Hollow is not empty, not by any means. The land still breathes, still stirs beneath his feet. Though the keeper is gone, the curse has not been fully undone, and Daniel knows he cannot rest yet, not until the hollow itself is free of the malevolent force that has bound it for so long. He glances down at the stone in his hand, now dim, its once blinding light reduced to a faint glow, almost as if it too is recovering from the battle. Daniel's fingers tighten around it, the faint warmth from the stone comforting him, reminding him of the fight he's just won. But he can't ignore the gnawing feeling in the pit of his stomach, the realization that the hollow is far more complex, far older than he ever could have imagined. The keeper was only a part of it, Daniel mutters to himself, his voice hollow in the cavernous silence. A fragment of something much darker. He knows the battle isn't over. He's won a victory, yes, but it's a fragile one. There's still much to uncover, and far more to fear. The hollow is ancient, and its history is tangled in ways Daniel can't fully comprehend, even with the keeper gone. The land itself still holds a power, an echo of something older than time. Taking a deep breath, Daniel turns from the altar, the light of the stone guiding him through the cavern. He doesn't know where he's going yet, but he knows he must move forward. There's more to discover, more to understand. As he steps away from the altar, the air shifts. It's subtle at first, a slight disturbance in the atmosphere, but it's enough to draw Daniel's attention. He pauses, listening, the soft rustle of movement in the shadows of the cavern. Not an animal, not the wind, something far more deliberate. His heart skips a beat. The hollow is stirring. Daniel's pulse quickens as the ground beneath him vibrates ever so slightly. The walls of the cavern seem to pulse with a rhythm of their own, like a heartbeat echoing through the stone. The ancient land is alive, and it's reacting to him, to his presence, to the disruption he's caused by defeating the Keeper. "What is it?" Daniel whispers, his voice barely a breath. Before he can answer his own question, a low rumble vibrates through the air. The cavern walls crack and shift, a deep, rumbling growl that seems to emanate from the very bowels of Black Hollow. The shadows around him grow thick and dark, twisting in unnatural ways, like something waking up from a long slumber. The atmosphere is thick with dread, and then, the sound of something massive moving. Daniel spins, his eyes wide with terror. The cavern, once so still and silent, is now alive with movement. Massive forms, shadowed, indistinct but unmistakable in their presence, begin to take shape around him. He can feel the power in the air, pressing against him like a physical force. He's not alone. The Keeper was only a fragment, but it wasn't the only force holding Black Hollow in its grip. The land itself is haunted, infested with ancient spirits and creatures bound to the curse. They are awakening, and Daniel is standing in the middle of it all. The air is thick with whispers now, too soft to fully understand, but the language is unmistakable. The spirits of Black Hollow have begun to stir, rising from the very earth beneath Daniel's feet. They are not the benevolent souls of the land, but the twisted, corrupted remnants of an age-long past. Their voices are a cacophony of sorrow and rage, their forms barely visible, just flickering shadows, barely tangible, but full of anger, full of malice. Daniel's breath catches in his throat. He instinctively raises the stone in front of him, the faint light glowing brighter as if it senses the danger surrounding him. The whispers grow louder, more insistent. The shadows shift again, and Daniel steps back, his mind racing. He needs to get out of here, needs to regroup. The Keeper's defeat has only unlocked more horrors, and he can feel the oppressive weight of Black Hollow pressing in from all sides. But as he turns to flee, a figure steps from the shadows. It's not like the Keeper, not at all. It's smaller, thinner, but its presence is just as terrifying. Its face is distorted, hollowed, as though it was never meant to be seen by human eyes. Its body is a collection of writhing shapes, shifting and contorting, a mass of shadow that flickers in and out of form. It raises its hand, pointing directly at Daniel. The temperature drops by several degrees in an instant, a biting cold that seeps through Daniel's clothes and into his bones. "You cannot escape," it whispers, the voice rasping, a sound like wind over dry leaves. "You belong to the Hollow, just as all who enter here do." True, Daniel's grip tightens on the stone, his heart racing. This creature, whatever it is, has an energy to it, a darkness that he can feel gnawing at his mind. It's different from the Keeper, but just as dangerous. It's not just the Keeper's power that lingers in Black Hollow. The land itself is cursed, and there are forces here far older, far more dangerous than Daniel could have ever imagined. "You cannot stop what has already begun," the creature continues, its voice low and mocking. "The Hollow will never let you leave. You are its prisoner, and it has claimed you." Daniel's chest tightens as the figure takes a step forward, its shape flickering again, the shadowy form stretching unnaturally. His mind spins. There's something in its words, something that gnaws at him, something real. The Hollow, it's not just a place. It's a force, a living thing that devours those who enter. And Daniel is no different from the others who have been drawn here before him. But he cannot give in. The stone pulses again, brighter this time, its energy surging through his body, pushing back against the creature's influence. The shadows recoil slightly as the stone's light bathes the cavern in an almost blinding glow. Daniel holds his ground. The hollow may not be done with him, but he's not done with it either. With a voice filled with defiance, he speaks, the words coming from deep within him, an instinct he can't explain. You're wrong. I will escape. I will free this land. The creature's form flickers, the shadows swirling around it as though they are being disturbed by his words. The whispers of the spirits grow louder, but Daniel doesn't falter. He knows now what he must do. This isn't just a battle of light and shadow, of stone and spirit. It's a fight for the soul of Black Hollow itself, and he's not going to lose. Daniel's breath comes in ragged gasps, his heart pounding in his chest. He knows now that his journey was never just about the Keeper or its rule over Black Hollow. The Hollow itself is alive, a vast, cursed being made of shadow, sorrow, and centuries of untold stories. The Keeper was only its most visible face. The rest, the true essence of the Hollow, is much more insidious, far older. The creature before him, this dark manifestation of Black Hollow, is only the first true form of the land's torment. It is no longer a mere guardian, but the Hollow itself, a being bound by forces Daniel cannot fully comprehend. He realizes that to break the curse, he will have to destroy the very heart of Black Hollow. To do so, he must face not only the spirits of the land, but the land itself, its malice and hunger. The creature's eyes burn with an ancient rage, its twisted shape swaying in and out of focus. It looms over Daniel, its voice an echo of centuries of torment. You cannot undo what has been done, it whispers, its voice cold and dry. You are mine now, just like all the others before you. You cannot escape the Hollow. It has claimed you as it claimed them. Daniel's eyes narrow. The whispers of the land are trying to twist his resolve, trying to convince him that he cannot win, that the Hollow has already decided his fate. But Daniel refuses to listen. He raises the stone once more, the last of its energy surging through him like a wave crashing against the shore. The air crackles with power as the stone pulses with light, brighter and more intense than ever before. The land around him seems to recoil, as if it too recognizes the power of the stone, recognizes that the curse of Black Hollow is no longer unchallenged. I'm not like them, Daniel mutters, his voice steady. I won't be another soul lost to this place. With those words, he thrusts the stone into the air, channeling all his remaining strength into it. The light from the stone erupts, blinding in its brilliance, a pure beam of energy that sears through the shadows. The creature screeches, its form warping and convulsing as the light strikes it, but it doesn't dissipate. No, the creature is stronger than that. It is part of the Hollow itself, and it resists, the land itself fighting back. The earth beneath Daniel's feet trembles, a great rumble building, as if the Hollow is attempting to shake him off. The ground cracks, opening wide beneath him, threatening to swallow him whole. The stone's light flickers dangerously, but Daniel holds firm, his grip tight as the power surges through him. I will break you, Daniel whispers fiercely, pushing against the land's resistance. I will free this land from you. The stone in his hand pulses once more, its light expanding outward, enveloping the cavern in a dazzling glow. The land itself shrieks, the ground breaking open beneath Daniel's feet as the darkness begins to recede, the shadows unraveling. The creature lunges one last time, its shadowy form trying to consume him, but the stone's light is too much. The light fills every corner of the cavern, every crevice of Black Hollow, as though the land itself is being purged of its curse. The darkness screeches in agony, its hold weakening, its shape distorting, and then, with a final deafening scream, the creature vanishes, torn apart by the stone's brilliance. The land shudders, its oppressive weight lifting in an instant. The rumbling fades, the cavern quieting, the last traces of the Hollow's dark power vanishing like smoke in the wind. Daniel stumbles, his body weak from the strain, the light from the stone dimming as its power fades. The cavern, once full of fear and shadow, is now bathed in an eerie calm. The air feels different, lighter, as though the land is no longer holding its breath. He looks around, the weight of the moment sinking in. Black Hollow is still, the curse broken. The creatures, the shadows, the torment gone. The Hollow is free, and so is Daniel. But even as he stands amidst the fading light, he knows that the battle has not been easy, nor will it be forgotten. The land is free of its ancient torment, but its history will remain. The stories of those who were once lost to it, the memories of the Hollow's curse, are written into the very soil, the very stones beneath his feet. Daniel breathes deeply, stepping forward, the first steps toward his freedom. The rain has stopped, and the sky above, once dark and oppressive, is clearing. The first light of dawn breaks through the clouds, casting the land in a golden glow. Black Hollow is no longer the place it once was. It is a place of new beginnings, of second chances. For Daniel, this is the end of his journey. The Hollow is no longer his prison. He has won.